So what's the big deal? Well, U.S. President Donald Trump says it's simple, really. His plan for Israel and Palestine is the best deal out there, and the Palestinians need to realize that.
This could be the last opportunity they will ever have.
But can we even call it a deal? The Palestinians say it's more like a done deal, or no deal at all. So how does Trump's plan stack up against the ones that have failed before? And does it stand any chance at all of ending more than 100 years of mistrust and war? Before we do a deep dive on the Trump plan, let's remind ourselves how we got into this mess. First off, there's Jerusalem. Over the centuries, Jews, Muslims, and Christians have fought over their holy city religiously. But they've also fought over the Promised Land. Who does it belong to? Go back far enough, and all three can stake a claim. Israel is trying to carve out a home here, and the Palestinians are trying to hold on to theirs. And it's this fight that Trump has stepped into with a new plan to solve things. Many have tried before him, and just as many have failed. In the fight to give the Jews their own country, 1917 was big. It's when Arthur James Balfour, the UK's foreign secretary, promised the Jewish people a national home in Palestine. This was the map back then, but it's been changing ever since, and wars have had a lot to do with that.
The time is the summer of 1948, a turning point in history for the people of Palestine, the Promised Land.
The Arab-Israeli War in 1948 was won by Jewish militias who took over a lot of land. 750,000 Palestinians lost everything. It's what they call the Nakba, the catastrophe.
كل العالم وصل من وجه الحرب وبعد ما تروق بيرجع كل واحد على بيته. فاحنا ما رجعناش على بيوتنا.
After the Arab-Israeli War, the borders changed from this to this. In 1967, the Six-Day War ended in Israel's military occupation of the West Bank and the Gaza Strip. But that didn't settle things. Israel continued to expand, the Palestinians fought back, and the cycle got stuck on repeat. The 1990s and the Oslo Accords brought a brief moment of hope. The first one, signed in 1993, was historic. Sworn enemies shaking hands on the White House lawn. Those two even won a Nobel Peace Prize. But the terms of the Oslo Accords failed to stick. Cue another attempt, the 2002 Arab Peace Initiative. This time, countries that belonged to the Arab League told Israel to end its occupation of Palestinian land, but Israel wasn't interested. And those are just the highlights in a string of failed deals. So let's take a look at what they're fighting over. It's this land between the River Jordan and the Mediterranean Sea. Today, it's carved up by Israeli settlements and guarded by separation walls.
The process that we've been gradually since 1967 is this process in which Israel is gradually overtaking Palestinian land, building settlements, demographically re-engineering, advancing its interests at the expense of the rights of Palestinians.
Something had to be done. And as soon as Donald Trump got to the White House, he figured he could pull it off. He put his son-in-law Jared Kushner in charge of coming up with a two-state solution, Israel and Palestine side by side. 3 years later, Kushner presented a plan that he says includes major Israeli concessions.
This is the first time that Israel has ever agreed to a Palestinian state, and it's the first time that Israel has agreed to a map. And so this is an amazing opportunity for the Palestinian leadership, and they'd be very wise to pursue it.
It's a great plan for Israel. It's a great plan for peace.
So what Kushner and Israel are basically saying is this. Israel isn't giving up any of its land, occupied or otherwise. And as far as the Palestinians are concerned, he says they need to know that any deal is better than no deal at all. But if you ask the Palestinians, well, actually, no one asked the Palestinians.
They call it a deal, except the party that they want to make a deal with is not even at the table.
One reason is that the Palestinians have basically cut off all ties with the Americans. That goes back to 2017, when Trump decided to recognize Jerusalem as the capital of Israel and moved the U.S. embassy there. The Palestinians were incensed. They've always seen East Jerusalem as theirs. So let's look at what the Americans and Israelis came up with. It's all in this 181-page document called Peace to Prosperity. It includes a $50 billion infrastructure plan. International investors are expected to pay for it, and it's supposed to create 1 million jobs for Palestinians while reducing poverty. But the Palestinians say money won't buy their support for a deal they haven't agreed to. One of the big issues is Israeli settlements, considered illegal under international law. Israel says it's agreed to stop building them in occupied territories like the West Bank for the next 4 years. But here's the thing. There are already 200 settlements with 600,000 Israelis living in them. Under Trump's plan, they would all be annexed as part of Israel. And critics say that just rewards Israel for breaking the law.
If there's one lesson we can gain from the last 50 plus years of building settlements, is the level of Israeli commitment to continue going at that project.
On Jerusalem, the deal says the city remains the undisputed capital of Israel. It also says that Palestine gets part of East Jerusalem, just not the part the Palestinians want.
Parts of Jerusalem they're offering is on the outskirts and don't even fall within international lines of what's recognized as East Jerusalem, which includes the old city of Jerusalem, where all the holy sites are.
And finally, Palestinian refugees can forget about going home to the land they've lost. The deal says there shall be no right of return.
This was entirely missing, and I think future peace negotiations will continue to fail unless that vital ingredient of rights is present.
And after all that, if this plan ever makes it, this is what the two states would look like. Palestine would be a patchwork of territories joined by tunnels and bridges, surrounded by a sea of Israeli settlements, roads, and separation walls. Israel would control the borders and airspace. And look at the Gaza Strip. Nearly 2 million Palestinians live there in almost complete isolation and poverty. They're being promised a 50-kilometer-long rail tunnel to the West Bank, one of the longest in the world.
هذه الدولة التي سيعطونها لنا هي الجبنة السويسرية Swiss cheese.
It doesn't offer them statehood, it rather offers them a permanent state of apartheid.
So if the Palestinians aren't sold, why are Trump and Netanyahu pushing this now? Many analysts say the timing of this plan wasn't a coincidence. Both leaders were heading into an election, Trump was facing impeachment, and on the day they announced the deal, Netanyahu was indicted on corruption charges.
So it's very convenient that this plan has come at this point.
Trump and Netanyahu's plan also seems like it has the backing of Arab states like Saudi Arabia, who are encouraging Palestine to negotiate.
I think this is all in a sort of context of a regional political shift in which these Arab states are allying themselves and entrenching their relationships with Israel and the US.
So you get the idea. The proportions of this conflict are biblical, as is the scale of suffering in this small corner of the world. No plan, not even this one from Trump and the Israelis, offers us a one or even a two-state solution that they can all agree on. What we have is more like a state of confusion. Start Here episodes are your primers to understand the world of news. But of course, there's so much more to every story, particularly when it comes to Israel and Palestine. So do go to aljazeera.com where you can find all sorts of interactives and features that will get you an even deeper insight into what's going on. I'll see you next week.